The midday sun beat down relentlessly on the construction site, turning the air thick and shimmering with heat. The metallic clang of tools echoed across the dusty lot, mingling with the distant hum of city traffic. It was the kind of day where the heat seemed to press down on your shoulders, making every movement feel heavier, every breath a little more laboured. John wiped sweat from his brow, his shirt already clinging to his back. The salty sting in his eyes was a constant reminder of the hours he'd already spent under the blazing sky. He glanced at his watch, wishing the hands would move faster, but the afternoon seemed to stretch on endlessly. It was just another scorching Tuesday in London, the kind of day when the city's usual greyness was replaced by a blinding, almost foreign sunlight. The heat radiated off the pavement, warping the air above the busy streets, and even the pigeons seemed to be seeking shade. He and his mate Dave were tasked with digging a new trench along the edge of the site. The job was simple enough on paper, but the ground was stubborn, packed hard from years of city life above it. Each shovelful was a battle, and the promise of a cold drink at the end of the day was the only thing keeping them going. This one was for some fancy fibre optic cables, the kind that would bring lightning-fast internet to the new office block. John didn't know much about the technology, but he knew the cables were expensive and the bosses wanted the job done right. They'd been at it since dawn, the early morning chill long gone, replaced by the oppressive midday heat. The hours blurred together, marked only by the slow progress of the trench and the growing pile of earth beside it. "How much further, you reckon?" Dave grunted, wiping a mix of sweat and grease off his forehead. His voice was tired, but there was a hint of hope in it. John squinted at the plans, the paper smudged and creased from use. "Another couple of meters, maybe," John replied, tracing a line on the blueprint with a calloused finger. He tried to sound confident, but the heat was making it hard to focus. He pointed to a spot just ahead of their current position, where the ground looked a little softer, as if inviting them to finish the job. Just then, the earth beneath John's shovel gave way with a sudden, unexpected lurch. The ground, which had resisted them all morning, seemed to collapse in an instant. A large chunk of soil crumbled inwards, revealing a gaping hole beneath their feet. The darkness below was startling, a sharp contrast to the sunlit world above. Both men jumped back in surprise, hearts pounding as they stared at the unexpected void. For a moment neither spoke, the only sound the distant rumble of traffic and their own quickened breathing. "What in the blazes?" Dave muttered, peering cautiously into the darkness. His voice was barely more than a whisper, as if afraid to disturb whatever might be lurking below. This wasn't on the plans. The blueprints showed nothing but solid ground, yet here was a mystery waiting to be uncovered, hidden beneath the surface of an ordinary day. Armed with torches and a sense of trepidation, John and Dave exchanged a nervous glance before carefully descending into the gaping hole. The world above faded away, replaced by the echo of their footsteps and the flickering glow of their lights. Each step took them further from the familiar, deeper into the unknown, where the air seemed to hum with secrets waiting to be uncovered. As their torches swept across the walls, a set of rickety metal stairs came into view, revealed by the shifting dust and shadows. The stairs looked ancient, their metal corroded by years of neglect, and they seemed to vanish into the inky blackness below, promising both danger and discovery. With each cautious step downward, the temperature dropped noticeably. The air grew colder, thick with moisture, and every breath they took became visible in the beam of their torches. The walls dripped with condensation, and the silence was broken only by the creak of the stairs and the distant sound of water dripping somewhere in the darkness. At the bottom of the staircase, the two men found themselves standing before a massive steel door, its surface battered and scarred by time. The door loomed before them, an imposing barrier between them and whatever lay beyond. John reached out, his hand trembling slightly as he touched the door. It was icy cold, sending a shiver up his arm. Etched into the metal was an inscription, its letters worn but still legible. "Knowledge is power, but power corrupts." The words seemed to echo in the confined space, heavy with warning and mystery. "That's a bit ominous, innit?" Dave whispered, his voice barely more than a breath. The inscription unsettled him, and the oppressive silence of the underground only made it worse. He glanced at John, searching for reassurance. John tried to appear calm, but he couldn't ignore the nervous flutter in his stomach. The weight of the moment pressed down on him, and he wondered what secrets the door was meant to guard. Summoning his courage, John braced himself and gave the door a hefty shove. The metal groaned in protest, echoing through the tunnel as if reluctant to yield its secrets. Inch by inch the door creaked open, revealing a vast chamber beyond. The space was dimly lit, shadows dancing along the walls as their torchlight swept across the room. The sheer scale of the chamber took their breath away. Before them stretched endless rows of towering bookshelves, their tops lost in the gloom above. The shelves seemed to go on forever, filled with volumes that looked untouched for centuries, their spines coated in dust and mystery. As they stepped inside, the torchlight revealed shelves laden with ancient-looking books, their covers cracked and faded. Interspersed among the books were strange, disc-shaped objects, their purpose unknown, hinting at knowledge and technology lost to time. Dave let out a low whistle, his eyes wide with amazement. "Blimey, it's a bloody library down here! Who could have built this, and why hide it so deep beneath the earth?" Their adventure had only just begun, and already the mysteries were piling up, each more tantalizing than the last. As their eyes adjusted to the dimness, John and Dave began to explore. The air was thick with the smell of dust and decay. The books, bound in leather and some even metal, seemed to whisper secrets from a forgotten age. Dave picked up a disc. It was made of a material he'd never seen before, shimmering faintly in his hand. "What do you reckon these are?" he asked, turning the disc over and over. "No idea," John admitted. He was examining a thick volume bound in what looked like iron. The title was equally perplexing, Chronicles of a City Unbroken. He opened the book. The paper was brittle, the ink faded. The language was English, but the style was archaic and difficult to decipher. John's voice trembled slightly as he read aloud, the ancient words echoing off the cold stone walls of the silent chamber. The only light came from a flickering lamp on the table, casting long, shifting shadows across the rows of dusty books. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and something else, something metallic, almost electric, that seemed to hum just beneath the surface. "And on the eve of the great storm the river shall rise, swallowing the city whole." The words seemed to hang in the air, heavy and ominous, as if the prophecy itself was waiting to be fulfilled. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the ancient window panes, and for a moment John wondered if the storm was already on its way. "The tower of glass shall shatter, its shards raining down upon the doom—" John's voice faltered as he imagined the city's tallest skyscraper breaking apart, glass cascading like deadly rain onto the streets below. The imagery was so vivid it was as if he could almost hear the distant sound of glass breaking, echoing through the city's empty avenues. He paused, a shiver running down his spine. The room suddenly felt colder, as if the prophecy itself had drawn the warmth from the air. "What the—" he whispered, barely loud enough for anyone to hear. Across the room, Dave had been quietly examining a shelf lined with strange metallic scrolls and odd ancient artifacts. He looked up, sensing the tension in John's voice, and set down the object he was holding. "What is it, mate?" Dave asked, concern etched across his face. "You look like you've seen a ghost. That book sounds a bit grim, doesn't it?" John pointed to the open book, his finger tracing the faded lines of text. "Look at this," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's talking about a massive storm, a flood that will wipe out the city. There's even an illustration here, see? Of a river bursting its banks, water pouring through the streets, and people running for their lives." John frowned, his brow furrowing as he read further. "It says the city will be destroyed. Not might be, not could be, will be. It's so certain, so final." "But the thing is," John continued, "it's written as if it already happened. Past tense and all, like we're reading about something that's already come to pass, not a warning about the future." Dave shrugged, trying to sound reassuring, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. "Maybe it's just a story, eh? Some old legend or a bit of local folklore. People used to write all sorts of dramatic things to scare each other. Or maybe it's just a dystopian novel or something," Dave added, gesturing to a nearby stack of books with dark, ominous covers. "You know how these old writers loved their apocalyptic tales?" But John couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The words in the book felt too real, too specific, as if they were meant for him and Dave alone. He glanced around the library, half expecting to see someone or something watching them from the shadows. Driven by a sudden urge, John flipped to the book's opening pages, searching for any clue that might explain the strange sense of dread that had settled over him. There, scrawled in faded ink, was a date: April 30th, 2025. The numbers seemed to leap off the page, sending a jolt of fear through John's chest. "Dave," John said, his voice tight with urgency, "look at this! Today is April 30th. The room seemed to grow even quieter, as if the library itself was holding its breath, waiting for what would happen next. Dave scoffed. "Don't be daft, John. A book can't predict the future." But, John's unease was kind of contagious. Dave walked over and peered at the book. He read the passage again, his brow furrowing. "The Tower of Glass. Isn't that the Shard?" he muttered. John nodded, his apprehension growing. The Shard, London's iconic skyscraper, did resemble a towering shard of glass. They spent the next hour frantically searching the library. They found more accounts of the storm, each more terrifying than the last. The details were unnervingly specific. The time of the storm, the landmarks destroyed, the rising of the Thames. Fear warred with disbelief in John's mind. Could this be true? Could this library hold some terrifying premonition of the future? John and Dave sat huddled in the flickering light of their torches, surrounded by the silent, watchful books. "We have to tell someone," John said, his voice trembling slightly. Dave ran a hand through his hair. "Who'd believe us? We come out of a hole in the ground, rambling about a magic library and doomsday predictions." "But what if it's true?" John argued. "What if people die because we didn't say anything?" The weight of responsibility pressed down on them. They were just construction workers, not heroes. What could they do against a disaster of this magnitude? After what felt like an eternity, Dave spoke, his voice resolute. "Right, we tell the foreman. If he doesn't believe us, we go higher. Someone has to listen." They climbed back up the metal stairs, the prophecy echoing in their minds. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the construction site. Their foreman, a burly man named Barry, looked up from a blueprint as they approached. "Where the bloody hell have you two been?" he roared. John and Dave exchanged a look. There was no easy way to say it. "Barry, we found something," John started, his voice shaky. "Something you need to see." Barry, initially skeptical, reluctantly agreed to follow them down into the hole. The storm hit just before dawn. It arrived with a fury that no one could have anticipated. Torrential rain lashed the city. The wind howled, a monstrous, unrelenting force. The Thames, whipped into a frenzy, surged over its banks. John and Dave watched in terror as the storm raged, their faces illuminated by flashes of lightning. They had spent the night frantically trying to warn as many people as they could. Some had listened, most had not. Now all they could do was watch and wait. The Shard, caught in the teeth of the gale, swayed precariously. A deafening crack split the air as the tower, unable to withstand the onslaught, began to crumble. The days that followed were a blur of shock and devastation. The storm, the worst in recorded history, had reshaped London. The city lay in ruins, the streets littered with debris and the air thick with the smell of floodwater and smoke. John and Dave, haunted by the memories of the library's prophecy, helped with the rescue efforts. The library itself had vanished, swallowed by the earth as if it had never been. Whether anyone believed their story no longer mattered. The storm was a stark reminder that the past, even a past that never was, could hold chilling echoes of the future, and sometimes the only warning we get is a whisper in the dark.